Well, hello folks. Welcome to what's obviously not my home. It's my Airbnb that I'm staying here in the Big Island. But I needed to film a kind of recap studio video, so utilizing this beautiful space to do so. So if you remember last year, at the beginning of last year of 2024, we went on a couples trip. Me and Kylie went to Kauai, and the main theme of that video was how you can turn like a family or a couples trip and kind of go off and do your own thing at sunrise, making sure that you kind of balance between both doing your own photography as well as managing the responsibilities as a good family member. And we did something very similar this year. We took a 2-day trip over to the beautiful island of Maui because Kylie had yet to visit. So this video is going to be kind of along the same theme as last year's videos about how you can make the most out of every trip, even if a trip is not necessarily about photography. And while I did do some vlogging on last year's Kauai video, I didn't do any vlogging for this year's Maui video, so that's why we're kind of here in the studio doing a little recap video. But lesson number one was that what ended up happening for this trip to even happen in the first place, Kylie kind of wanted to go last minute. And like the idiot that I am, I had already jumped the gun and booked a trip with Darwin and Lummi to come here to the Big Island. So I had to end up canceling that trip with Darwin and Lummi. They still went on, they still did their own thing, and they got some beautiful shots of the Hawaiian hawk here on the Big Island. At the same time, I was stuck in Maui with Kylie because I forgot to kind of plan and coordinate things with her to make sure that my schedule stayed free for her birthday weekend. I ended up missing an opportunity to photograph the Hawaiian hawk, and until this day of recording, I still haven't gotten a nice portrait shot of a wild Hawaiian hawk. And another thing that went wrong on that trip was that I got sick. So that was primarily the reason why I wasn't vlogging on Maui. In fact, you can kind of tell from my voice, and if you're gonna watch these following videos from the Big Island that are coming up, you'll see that my voice is pretty hoarse still because I'm kind of recovering from like a bronchitis or pneumonia. So I ended up getting sick from that trip as well. But each individual shoot that we did, each little adventure that we did as couples, I did do a little bit of photography, so I wanted to kind of recap the lessons that I learned from each of those individual little adventures and just kind of sum it up in this video. So the first stop that we made on our trip to Maui, immediately after checking into the Airbnb, doing housekeeping stuff, travel housekeeping stuff, was to hit up McKenna Beach, or Big Beach, which is on the southern side of the island, kind of near Kihei. Now, photography-wise, I didn't bring my underwater housing or anything because I didn't really feel like, risking the camera gear to, photograph this beach. Even though the water was pretty clear, I didn't feel like there was anything that was to shoot for any underwater stuff. What I did want to do though is fly my drone, and I wanted to try and get a shot of the crystal clear water of the beach leading up to this cinder cone. I just wanted to kind of incorporate that cinder cone and the beach in one particular shot. And since this trip wasn't a dedicated photography trip, I ended up bringing the Mini 4 instead of the Air 3, which may have been a mistake. I initially flew the drone out east, kind of over the beach, and I kind of wanted to get a shot of the cinder cone right beneath the bigger cinder cone, which is the big mountain of Haleakala. And while I did end up getting a shot from this angle, it wasn't really speaking to me all that much. So what ended up happening was I flew my drone all the way from one end of the beach all the way towards the other side of the beach to try and shoot it the other way, with the beach in the foreground, cinder cone in the middle, and then in the background were the West Maui Mountains. And I ended up liking this shot a whole lot better. Unfortunately, by the time I sent the drone from one end of the beach to the other, I had run out of battery, so I was only able to grab one quick shot and a little bit of video on the way back. But that's where the lesson for this particular adventure comes in, because again, I was using the Mini 4 with its, under 250 milligram whatever weight battery, the smallest battery possible, and didn't have enough juice. So the consideration that I am thinking about now is whether or not I get one of those plus batteries for the Mini, or just get rid of the Mini altogether and just suck it up and carry around the Air 3. Let me know what you guys think. Here's the problem though, is that I brought the Air 3 on this particular trip to the Big Island and I didn't even use it once. It's still sitting in the suitcase, not even used. So I don't know. I still kind of like having both. The Air 3 though, for this particular shot might have been the better choice, because when I take a look back at this one particular shot, it's shot with the wide angle lens of the Mini 4 at 24mm, but I think if I were to fly the drone even further back and shoot it with the 70mm like the Air 3, I think I would have appreciated having a little bit more of that compression of the cinder cone against the West Maui Mountains. I think it would have made for a more simpler but a more powerful composition as a whole. But yeah, we'll definitely go back and try to revisit this particular beach. You know, in addition to the fact that we want a different focal length, I also want to try and see if we can get different lighting. I think maybe an early morning or a sunrise at this particular beach probably would work best, because this kind of postcardy, almost like very harsh midday lighting that we got on this particular day didn't really work for this shot, because while everything is pretty well lit and the water looks very nice, you can't really tell that the cinder cone is even a cinder cone. I kind of want to go back again with the bigger drone to get the more compressed shot, and I also want to try and see if I can get a little bit better lighting for this particular composition. But with clear skies in the forecast, we didn't even bother trying to attempt to shoot sunset on this particular day. So the following morning, after grabbing some of the best locomoco that I found anywhere from Kula Lodge, I was somehow able to convince Kylie to make a pit stop at Hosmer's Grove, which isn't necessarily the most scenic spot for, you know, photography, but for wildlife photography, which is what I'm into right now, oh man, this area is next level. All right, folks, welcome to Hosmer's Grove here on the beautiful island of Maui. We're out here for a little vacation for Kylie's birthday, but I convinced her that we could spend the morning out here. This is supposed to be like a prime spot to photograph the Eevee, and I hear one that's really, really close. I just can't see it. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get some good shots here this morning that makes this trip all worth it. Man, if your goal is to try and to get the Eevee, there's stuff happening around us so much. There's one hiding in the brush over here. I took a couple of shots, but I'm gonna set up my tripod because yeah, like there's a lot that's going on right now. I'm hoping to try and get close to one, try to capture it. And yeah, these guys are not as skittish as they are on the Big Island. Much more smaller and condensed area that contains them a lot more. So as much as I love running around and chasing birds, there's a part of me that feels like I get my best wildlife shots when I just patiently sit and wait. So that's what I'm doing. I'm parked myself up behind this tree. We're pointing our camera straight at these kind of yellow flowers. Unfortunately, I don't know what they're called, but the Eevee seem to like them a lot. So parking myself here. They're flying around like crazy. They're everywhere. Like every direction I look, I can hear them and then eventually spot them, but it's kind of hard to sit here and keep track. So hopefully one shows up and starts feeding on those flowers. All right, we got one climbing up the stem of the tree in the back. Oh, right in front of our faces, right there. Kylie, it flew right in front of you. Huh? I think I got my Eevee. Let's just see if we can grab more video of this guy. So worth it. Yeah, if you're into getting photos of the Eevee, Hosmer Grove here on Maui is your spot. despite having less than an hour to spend here in Hosmer's Grove, I was able to get some of the best EEV shots that I have gotten to date, and I've shot the EEV a couple of times, even upon returning to the Big Island again and getting the opportunity to photograph the EEV once again. I don't think I was able to get as close to the EEV as I did on Maui, so this is definitely the go-to spot if you want to photograph the EEV. And I kind of did a little bit of research, and just based off of the eyeball test, the camping situation actually looks pretty favorable, and that helps a lot, especially when we're talking about Maui, because usually the Airbnb and the lodging costs to stay on Maui are pretty expensive, where it's $20 a night here at Hosmer's Grove, so it's really a nice steal, and you can wake up, go shoot wildlife all day if you wanted to, and then just camp and spend the night. And you don't get a shower and you don't get a safe place to store your stuff, but honestly, that's worth it. $20 a night to wake up and go shoot wildlife is totally worth it. And it's a little bit of a cheat code too if you want to shoot sunrise at Haleakala, because Hosmer's Grove is inside of the park entrance. So in theory, if you were to wake up super early, you could sneak out of the campground and head up to the summit for sunrise without a reservation, which is near impossible to get nowadays. The cheat code that I used to do was to make sure that I get into the national park before 3 a.m. So usually I would just shoot sunset, shoot Milky Way or whatever, and stay up there till sunrise because I wasn't able to get a sunrise reservation. But by using the campground, you kind of bypass the whole system, and then you don't have to wake up at stupid o'clock just to go and shoot sunrise at the summit. Our next stop on our itinerary was Iao Valley. I did drive all the way back down into town just to take Kylie to go see Iao Valley. She didn't want to go rock climbing down the rock walls to go photograph the river like we did our last time we were in Maui, so unfortunately I didn't bother taking any photographs, but I did take some video. Iao Valley is always beautiful to see, but unless I'm getting some nice foreground action with the water, I'm not gonna bother trying to pull out my camera and take a shot. And our final adventure of this trip took us up to Haleakala. Because we didn't get sunrise reservations, of course, and Kylie wasn't down to wake up early at 3 a.m., we went up for sunset. And I made multiple mistakes on this particular trip. The first being not scouting out the location to shoot or watch the sunset. I gave Kylie two options. I said we can either A, watch the sunset, or B, watch the light set on the landscape, which I would personally prefer for photography, but she wanted to watch the sunset. So I said, okay, we'll book it all the way up to the topmost parking lot, which we didn't even find parking up there because it was so packed. But even after parking in a lower parking lot and walking up, getting up to that particular point, we didn't really get the best position to actually physically watch the sunset. It was kind of setting almost behind the mountain, so it's like we weren't even able to visualize where the sun was setting anyways. And that's my fault. I took her to this spot, and I could have prevented this from happening if I had just done a quick photo pills check ahead of time, and we could have gone to a parking lot that was further down the road and actually watched the actual sun setting over the clouds, which is what we should have done. But that was mistake number one. Mistake number two was, even though we were watching that sunset from that particular point, I still wanted to photograph the light setting over, the landscape of Haleakala. So I set up my time lapse facing the other way. I walked away to kind of hang out with Kylie and stuff. And lo and behold, this is why I kind of hate Maui a little bit. A tourist comes right in front of my camera and starts taking her own selfies and doing all that kind of stuff. And while that isn't really my fault, I kind of want to take like radical accountability for what happened, because I should have stood there. I should have stood there, with my camera. I should have, made sure that she didn't walk into the time lapse and therefore ruining the time lapse and stuff. So it was just a frustrating experience. I ran over, and by the time I ran over, she was done taking her selfies and stuff. And then I just stood by my camera for the rest of the sunset. Now, the one saving grace that did actually happen from this particular sunset was the fact that we were able to get some beautiful backlight, again, on Haleakala crater and the landscape. But while all the tourists were focused on just watching the sunset, their eyes were all pointed towards the sun, Kylie and I had like this little area towards the back end of the lookout just to ourselves. We were able to take beautiful shots of the earth shadow and that pointy Haleakala shadow with the earth shadow, and we were able to get some nice couple shots together. We didn't have to fight people and fight the tourists and all that kind of stuff because we were just kind of secluded in our own little area, which personally for me, I think made for better images overall. And while yes, I did end up getting a time lapse of that earth shadow and that pointy Haleakala shadow, I think if I were to be able to find a better angle for that particular composition, I think that shot would be nice. So that's definitely a shot that I'm gonna have to chase when I go back to Maui and camp at Hosmer's Grove. So in conclusion, despite this trip not necessarily being about photography, you can kind of see how, you know, at the end of the day, each of these little individual adventures and each of these individual shoots, there is something that's still valuable and applicable for future trip planning and just lessons that I think you guys might find valuable, maybe so that you don't make the same mistakes that I do and learn some lessons from my stupid errors. So even though this video isn't necessarily our typical like in the field type of photography activities, I still wanted to, again, make this video because I needed to make a video from this particular trip, but also share some lessons that I took away from this trip, and hopefully you guys find it helpful and again, not make the same mistakes that I did. Let me know what you guys think about this type of content. I think it's a nice way that we can still get like a solid video out of a trip that's not necessarily photography focused, and you know, where we don't have like a script planned or, you know, any dedicated YouTube sort of thing. I think it's still valuable and still helpful to just share this type of information. So let me know what you guys think of this different style of content, and hope that you're okay with me changing it up. If not, the unsubscribe button is there, but if you like this type of travel, vacation, and a little bit of photography education, hit that like button, comment below, subscribe if you aren't already. See you guys in the next video. Peace out.